everybody, we are live from Right Law Group. We are missing Caitlin today. She is out of the state, and I just noticed I made us crooked. Sorry about that, everybody. Today we have Dan Layshock with us. He's one of our associate attorneys here at Right Law Group, and he's going to be taking the lead, getting his information out to everybody so everybody can get to know Dan. They don't just have to spend all the time talking with me and Caitlin.
All right.
But Caitlin was very kind to give us a list of questions, so I feel like Oprah. We've got our...
I feel like I'm on Oprah too.
Well, it's nice to see you, Dan. How are you?
Good to be here.
We've even got a little fireplace here going with our attorneys. We'll give a few more minutes here. Normally we do this between 11:30 and noon 30. So we'll wait just a second here to see if we have anybody else coming on. Get all cozy here. All right. Hey, are you feeling nervous?
I'm feeling good. We got the nice fireside chat. If it was not the middle of July here, we might have the fireplace on and really get the ambiance going. But I'm feeling
so
pretty good.
In a couple months, we'll get that fireplace on.
All right.
Could even have chats with Dan. Have your coffee.
Fireside chats with Dan.
All right, so let's get started. It looks like we have a couple people tuning in. Oh, hello. We have Craig watching. How's it going? Thanks for tuning in. So we're going to ask a couple questions just for our viewers here to get to know you. First and foremost, who are you, where are you from, and what brought you to Colorado?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks everyone for tuning in. My name is Dan Layshock, one of the associate attorneys here at Right Law Group. We're growing. We have 3 attorneys now, myself, Alexis, and Jimmy Lytle just joined us, but I think this is my first time meeting you guys. So once again, my name is Dan Layshock. I'm another transplant to Colorado, like many people are. I've been here about 7 years now. In fact, it'll be about 7 years right in August. Came here in 2014, went to DU Law School, graduated there after 3 years in 2017. And I think, like most people that come to Colorado, we come here, because of the natural beauty of the state. And God, we come here from other parts of the countries where, God, you can't just go outside and have this wonderful scenery and, get outside and be active. And that's
so where did you come from?
Yeah, so came from a small town in Maryland. Maryland, kind of on the East Coast. A lot of people, when they think of Maryland, they just think it's like DC and Baltimore, but believe it or not, there's actually a rural part of Maryland called the Eastern Shore, mostly just cornfields and chicken farms about. But yeah, it's a little town called Salisbury, Maryland. Been out here. Thank you.
So now we have to know, since we're here in Colorado, which is better, Maryland or Colorado?
I gotta say, I miss the ocean every once in a while. Lake Pueblo is a close second.
Right.
But no, God, being here, I love Colorado and plan to stick around.
Excellent. Well, we plan on keeping him, so you guys are going to know a lot more about him. So we just kind of went over what brought you here. What is your favorite part, though, of Colorado so far?
So I've actually lived in a few areas of the state. I got to say I love the Springs. I went to law school at DU, Denver. Denver's okay. I honestly, coming from the East Coast, it kind of just felt like another city. So
yeah.
I started being a prosecutor though before I did defense, and the first spot was in Trinidad, Colorado. I was there for a year. Trinidad being pretty much the most southern town in Colorado before you hit New Mexico. It really kind of feels like New Mexico more than Colorado.
Yeah.
But that whole area of the state has a kind of interesting vibe to it as well. You're right next to the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. I was there, about a year in Trinidad. I lived out on the western slope in Montrose for about 6 months. Beautiful out there in Montrose. But ultimately ended up coming here to the Springs, and I've been here in the Springs for about 2.5 years. And
excellent.
I gotta say, it's a great combination of being close to the mountains, and you have everything you could want in the city without it just feeling like another city. So.
Yeah. Speaking of the mountains, I see that we have Becca listening in. She's one of our avid watchers who also loves hiking in the mountains.
All right.
So we'll have to get to more good places to hike here in a little bit, but we do want to dig into the law and how you practice, and specifically with Right Law Group. I know you mentioned earlier that you've been here, you got out of DU Law, go DU, for I think you said 2017.
Yep.
And then you started practicing law and you were in Trinidad. Then you mentioned you were in Montrose and El Paso County. So the question that we had was, what brought you to Right Law Group?
Yeah, so...
No pressure.
Right. God, my boss is asking why I'm here again. Just asking me to reaffirm. Anyway, so I'm, came to Law Group Right Law Group out after about 3.5 years of being a prosecutor. Being a prosecutor is a great way to get experience in criminal law. You really need experience to be a good defense attorney, and you know what the laws are. You know how to be there in court and ask questions. Talk to juries. One of the issues though that I always saw with our criminal justice system is that law enforcement are not equal investigators. They investigate pretty much one side of the story.
Yeah.
And so they make up their mind very early on who they think is going to be the responsible party, who they're going to charge with a crime, and then they ask questions that are designed to build the case from that side, and it's only one side, it's the one that they want to prosecute. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not, and sometimes there are just other circumstances that never get brought up. And that's something I did not feel represented when I was at the prosecutor's office, especially at some of the larger prosecutor's office. Like here in Colorado Springs, I think it is the largest prosecution office in the state.
Yeah.
And there is a push just to get things done, and maybe not do the most investigation on your end. And I kind of wanted to be able to investigate both sides of the cases. And for lack of a better terms, I was pressured not to do that at the DA's office. I was pressured to do it this way, and it actually disencouraged from talking to other witnesses and getting both sides of the story. So now that I'm here doing defense, I can really dig into that, and it's something that I like a lot.
So it sounds like what really brought you from the prosecution to the defense is a love of the law, but also wanting to make sure you do the right thing in cases.
Right. Hashtag right thing.
Hashtag right law. I had to do the shameless plug. But it really is. It's so important, especially for our clients, to know that they have someone on their side who is digging into what actually happened. Because you're right, in so many of these cases, especially domestic violence cases that we see, so many of these times the police are coming in with one side of the story, they do their investigation, but there's an entirely different side that just hasn't been brought to light or hasn't been investigated. And it sounds like that's what you've been doing, which I feel like it's kind of awkward for us to have this conversation because I know that's what you do. I know how hard you work on these cases. But for our watchers and our viewers here on our Facebook Live, one question that we were getting is, what are your favorite kinds of cases to work on now as a defense attorney with that background in prosecution?
Yeah. The domestic violence cases are always an interesting one because that's the one where I think it's the most bias that it comes in, because that is the one where the police go in there and they literally have someone that they want to arrest. I think we've talked about this on some of the previous ones. Colorado law says that the police must make an arrest if there's probable cause in a DV case. A lot of these sort of cases, shoplifting, that you talk to the police and it's like, oh my God, I've never done this before. The police actually have the discretion whether or not they're going to really charge you with the crime. Domestic violence cases, no. Mandatory law says they have to make an arrest. And so those are the cases that you can really dig in there, get both sides of the story, and really show a side of the case that has not been brought to light by the police reports and the law enforcement investigation. So I think that's the one that really lets you look into those facts more than any other type of case.
So really digging into those domestic violence cases. I mean, I know you and I have talked at length where we have clients who come in, they're actually the ones that call the police in these cases.
Yes.
Talk to us about kind of how you handle those cases and what you do to dig into, let's say, for example, these domestic violence cases. With your practice, how are you making sure that you're investigating the case like you talked about and going about presenting our client's side of the story?
Right. I mean, right off the bat, the easiest thing to do is just to listen to the client. I mean, that is something that law enforcement doesn't do the greatest job of. And if they do, they're only talking to somebody to pick out the little things that they can do to use against them. That's some of those rights that you get. Anything that you can say can and will be used against you, and that's what it is. You're not going to have, when you're reading these police reports, you're not going to have a full accounting of what is actually said by the defendant. You're going to have the little snippets picked out that they think that they can use against them.
Right.
So that's something I always want to make sure I listen to the whole aspect of it, what's going on. A lot of times, we can see that a lot of these domestic violence cases come up in the light of pending divorces.
That's true.
So, their tensions are high. Somebody, one party or another, might think that, oh, I'm going through a divorce and I might be able to get a leg up on my significant other, or soon-to-be ex-significant other, by filing a domestic violence criminal case. And that happens more often than you'd think, and it's one of the reasons that we really need to make sure that both sides are brought up. I recently got out of a trial, a DV trial, ended up getting a successful verdict for my client, got acquitted on both charges. And the officer came up on the stand, and I was asking the officer about how they do the reports. And you would think that an officer might say, if I hear something that sounds a little bit like sketchy, if they change their story a little bit, then I might dig into that or I might probe into that. And that's not what the officer said. The officer took the stand and say, I literally just write down what the victim says in my report, and it goes on the report, and that's it. No further investigation, no sort of forensic questioning, just whatever they say I'm taking for granted, and it goes in my report. And
that was one of those cases too that you were talking about where they were kind of ramping up for a divorce, right?
It absolutely was, yeah. All of this, the charges were all filed sort of in the shadow of, pending divorce litigation.
How can I get the most out of this divorce? How can I get the most out of this house? Oh, let's file a claim saying domestic violence, so I kick him out and he can't be here.
Exactly, yeah. And that's kind of what we saw happen in that case.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness you got him off of that. And we actually did post that earlier on our Right Law Group page last week, Dan, with our client standing there. It was such a great moment. It really was. I feel like we're sports commentators. That one play that you made back on that criminal trial case, but it's so important because a lot of this, our clients and even our friends and family who know what we do, they don't get to see how we operate day to day. They don't get to see those highs and lows, and that was a wonderful high, having not high as in like feeling high, but a high point in our firm, going through and making sure that you got that accurate and correct verdict for our client, showing that he actually did nothing wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was an argument that got heated. People were up in their faces yelling, and then somebody decides that they want to, report a slightly embellished version of that to law enforcement, with the idea that that's going to help them out down the road in their divorce case.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness you could help him. We did have a couple of other questions we wanted to go through. One thing that Caitlin was wanting to ask you was, what is one thing that you wish people knew about hiring an attorney or knew prior to hiring an attorney?
Yeah. So two kind of comments towards that. I mean, first of all, the earlier you can get an attorney in your criminal case, the better. Like right off the bat, especially in some of these cases where, there's another named victim in there. If you want to try to get the protection order modified, something like that, those are going to be immediate things that an attorney can help you out with. Also, just sort of setting yourself up for taking good steps. Like maybe it's a DUI case and you want to start looking at taking classes that might improve your offer or outcome down the road. I mean, those are all things that getting an attorney early on can really help on. Second, about hiring an attorney, basically general advice on this: any attorney who makes promises during your initial phone call, that should raise a red flag.
Yeah, I agree. I want the record to reflect. Yeah. I did not coach him on this. I didn't know what his answers were going to be, but I could not agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah. We see it all the time, and we've had so many clients that come and say, well, I was told that this attorney could do this, and we look at the case and we see something completely different. So can you talk a little bit about why an attorney cannot give you, hey, this is what we're going to do on this case during that first phone call when they call in?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, every case is going to be different, and that goes for the facts of the case, and it also is just going to go on how it's handled. I mean, at the end of the day, the criminal justice system is run by people, and people are different. They change. Even the same person is going to be different from one day to the next. And so a lot of our at least initial offers in these cases are going to be dependent on, one, how the district attorney is feeling, and two, how the judge is feeling. And so any attorney that comes in and promises you, oh, I know this is how it's going to go, that's probably not the best advice.
Yeah, and a lot of the times not a lot of the times, when someone first calls, we don't have any information. We have the charges and we know what courtroom they're in, but we don't get to see the police reports or the body-worn camera evidence, nothing. And there's so many nuggets and so many helpful things in that body-worn camera evidence, especially.
There absolutely is. And the body-worn becomes more and more pertinent when you take these things to trial. Take you with an example right off the bat. DUI cases. there are something called the Standard Field Sobriety Tests, SFSTs for short. If you ever hear about people like walking in a line, maybe raising a leg, they do this thing where they say, follow my finger with your eyes. Those are the Standard Field Sobriety Tests. One of the common things that we hear about is say the alphabet backwards. That's actually not a real thing.
No. Thank God.
They might ask you to count backwards, or they might ask you to say the alphabet forward, like, say, hey, start from K and go to T, but they're not going to ask you to say the alphabet backwards. Right. Anyway, but the thing is, on some of those more standard tests where it's like, follow my finger, walk in a straight line, raise one leg, they have these sort of clues that they use. And the thing is, almost across the board in every single DUI case, they're going to write that somebody fails those tests. Oh my God, and it's because the smallest thing on those tests counts as a clue. And there's no variation for like, it was just a little deviation versus a giant one. It's the little deviation that counts as one. So for example, you're walking in a line because the police officer tells you to, and they say that, maybe you don't exactly touch the tip of your toe to your heel like you're supposed to. You miss it by maybe half a centimeter. That's a clue. It doesn't matter if you only miss heel to toe once on the entire 9 steps that you take. It doesn't matter if you miss it every single time. It doesn't matter if you miss it by half a centimeter or by half a foot. They're going to mark that down as a clue on their report.
Right.
And so you read these reports and they say, he got 6 out of 6 clues on the walk and turn test. And then you look at the actual body worn camera and everything looks fine, and you sort of like wonder, why did they get all of the clues wrong?
Right. When you don't see anything
Yeah,
wrong.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot.
Yeah, and it's something that, when someone, going back to the initial point that we were talking about, where people say, well, I had this attorney in an initial consultation promised me this, without having trained attorneys being able to go through your discovery and go through those police reports, it's going to get missed. So it's so important that we bring that up for people to know, hey, we are going to tell you we're going to do these steps in your case, we're going to review your discovery, we're going to review these aspects, but until we actually get in there, we can't give you any promises or tell you anything, which is exactly what you were saying. Any
Right.
attorney that does say, oh, I guarantee I can get this, they may be full of it. Or full of themselves, who knows?
Maybe both.
Maybe, but it's not the right way. And I do my quotations every time, but it's so helpful. Like, we are really trying to operate in the correct way, getting people on the right path here at Right Law Group. To that end, based on kind of this conversation that we're having about, coming in, talking to an attorney, tips on how to prepare for meeting with an attorney, do you have any tips for any clients that you've seen for how to handle themselves or how to manage going through this process? Any tips that current or, I was saying current clients, but people who are charged or family members, any tips or tricks for just going through this process of getting through the criminal justice system?
Well, a lot of that's going to depend on the type of case that we're dealing with. In a DUI case, for example, some of the things that you might want to do while it's going on is if we decide that trying to get a favorable plea disposition is going to be the route that we want to go, maybe you want to start taking some of the classes that are going to make it look better to the DA, make it look better to the judge. In a domestic violence case that's ongoing, keeping records of any sort of communication between yourself and that significant other that was involved, that might come into play going forward in the case as well. And those are things that we want to keep records of.
Honestly, I mean, to your point on domestic violence cases, for any case, keeping records is incredibly helpful.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just like what you were saying with the police doing investigations on the DUIs, if someone has a charge for a DUI and they can remember things that the police told them, you can sit down, write all that out, then that's stuff that they can give us, like you were talking about before, where we listen to our clients and go through kind of their side of the story. Writing things down, maybe it's just the lawyer in you, but
right.
Writing things down is always helpful as long as it doesn't go anywhere but to us.
Absolutely, right.
Yeah, that's fantastic. One thing that I will point out, and I think we've mentioned this before in previous Facebook Lives. One thing that is really wonderful about Right Law Group and the way that we work with our clients is if you have a client that's written all this down, so for example, what you were talking about with the domestic violence cases, if you've written down all of these issues, you can actually send them over to Dan. We give our clients client share folders, so you can upload everything you have and get it to Dan or whoever your assigned attorney is, saying, hey, this is everything that I have, and then you and your attorney can actually dig in and get all of that reviewed together before our strategy session.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's a great tip for either clients or people who may know people going through the criminal justice system. We want to break it up here at the very end. We've gotten some insight into how you practice the law and how clients can expect to be treated dealing with an attorney, especially one at Right Law Group. But we want to just get our viewership here to know a little bit about you. And just kind of who you are outside of the law. Obviously, you're very skilled and you're a very accomplished attorney, but outside the law, what is it that you like to do, Mr. Layshock?
Oh man, just enjoying the state of Colorado. I get out doing some hikes, doing some of the 14ers here in Colorado. Planning on doing Longs Peak this weekend actually, so
nice.
See how that goes.
Is that one of the ones that you've checked off?
No, so it'll be number 20 for me. So
wow.
Depending on the criteria, they're either 53 or 58 14ers in Colorado. So this would be number 20 for me. And
how many? I can't remember. How many do we have? You said.
So I'm either 53 or 58.
Okay.
And it basically depends on let's say if you have one and then another one next to it, does that slightly lesser one count as a 14er?
I mean, for me personally, I would want to count it so that
right.
I could hit 2 off and seem
exactly.
like. Well, and if you all have ever been to our office, Dan actually has a list of all the 14ers in Colorado. So is this one going to go on your list of checking it off the bucket list?
Absolutely will, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Dan, thank you for coming on. I know we kind of threw you into this, and Caitlin gave us some great questions to go over. Is there anything else that you want our Right Law Group fans here on Facebook to know about you, or anything that you want to leave parting words for them on?
Oh, I think you did a great job covering it. Just thanks everyone for tuning in. Great working with Alexis here, having everyone here, and look forward to talking with you if you ever come here as part of our one of our clients. Hope it doesn't come to that though, right. Since we are a criminal defense firm. But anyway, thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, just so you guys know, we always like to give you a kind of foreshadowing of what we're doing next time. What we intend to do is we're going to try to get to have everybody at our team coming on and introducing themselves. Some of our team is remote, so we may have to do some Zoom meetings instead of these live fireside chats. But if you guys have any questions or anybody that you're interested in us bringing on, we're going to start trying to open this up more so that it's not just me or Caitlin talking all the time. If you all have any questions or issues that you want addressed, as always, let us know. And we will be back and see you all. I'm not actually sure who our guest is next week. Caitlin and I are still building that up. It's a big surprise. But we'll get that coming up on our Facebook Live next week. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and have a great weekend.
Right,
bye, guys. You just gotta smile for the camera until it's over.